Let's turn now to Philip Bump, national correspondent for The Washington Post, for some perspective on the latest Russian allegations. Philip, good to see you. All right, an early morning tweet storm from the president attempting to deflect or put blame on Democrats for all of this amid a number of allegations about Trump campaign officials meeting with Russians.
Right.
Will this strategy work?
It seems to be working with his base so far, at least in terms of the extent to which people have rallied around this idea. Well, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi did it too. But I think it's important to note that that's disingenuous, that the question here is not, did anyone ever meet with the Russian ambassador? Of course, government officials met with the ambassador from a foreign country. The issue here is, to what extent was Russia involved with the Trump campaign before Election Day? Jeff Sessions is not just the attorney general. He was very instrumental in the Trump campaign during the campaign itself. That's what the question is. That's why this web of ties is important. It's not just sitting down and meeting with the ambassador.
Now that Sessions has recused himself, where do things go from here?
Well, it's a good question because it's not clear exactly what Congress might do. Right now, there are investigations that are underway. The Senate Intelligence Committee, for example, appears to be investigating this. And of course, there is the FBI investigation, which has been underway for some time. That is what the Justice Department, obviously overseeing the FBI. Jeff Sessions won't be involved with that, but there are a lot of other options. There could be a special prosecutor. There could be an independent committee that's set up to investigate this. We're going to have to see. And the real question here is political pressure. To what extent does Congress feel like it needs to act to do something more about this?
And Philip, the question is, to what degree does the White House feel like they need to appoint more officials who have a more aggressive posture towards Russia,
right,
perhaps to prove that there is no collusion between the two governments, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the White House has already established, obviously, its top tier. It's put out most of its cabinet nominees. There are some signs that it may be actually doing exactly what you just said, making an appointment.
Deputies.
Exactly, deputies that demonstrate that. But it still doesn't answer the question, right? I'm not sure that Donald Trump feels as though he will be motivated to demonstrate how anti-Russia he is in that way with these questions looming.
But there are, Margaret Brennan and others reported this week that there appear to be some signs that the administration's approach to Russia is shifting.
Yes, I mean, the broad question that we have here is what happened with Russia before Election Day, right? And I think that with that question unanswered, all of whatever Donald Trump does now, whatever the administration does now, I think is secondary to that primary question. And I think that clearly what we're seeing this morning and what we've seen over the course of the past week is Donald Trump's response to this is not to change what he's doing. It is instead to try and deflect blame.
And what then are the ripple effects in terms of his agenda, right? He had a big speech this week that was supposed to be a turning point, if you will. Congressional Republicans seemed happy with it, but then this storm reemerges. How does that affect what happens in Congress and the president's agenda moving forward?
Well, I think what's stunning is that he came out of that speech having given a lot of people the impression, okay, this is a different sort of Donald Trump. This is a guy who's willing to work together. He is putting, he's talking about policy issues, roughly, but he was talking about policy issues. And then instantaneously he steps on it. Obviously there was a story the day following about the Russia ties, which got him incensed. But, during the speech he said, oh, it's the time for trivial fights is over, I think is what he said. And then he starts launching all these trivial fights. So Donald Trump repeatedly during the campaign would do something and then immediately step on it and make it harder for himself. I think that's what we saw him do this week after his speeches.
And meantime, there is resistance within the Republican Party itself over Obamacare plans. Many Republicans saying they haven't even had a chance to see it yet.
Right. So Obamacare, the trick to Obamacare is Obamacare itself was sort of the bipartisan strategy for dealing with health care. It came out of what's called Romney Care in Massachusetts. This was the big strategy. It's hard to figure out how you're going to give everyone everything at a low cost, which is what Donald Trump has promised. It's meeting with resistance, and it's not really clear where we'll end up. It was pledged, we're going to repeal this thing and replace it, but the replacement is a lot trickier, I think, than people had anticipated.
Well, and he has stoked the ire of members of his own party, including Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, who are suggesting maybe they won't vote for a replacement.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the devil is in the details, and Donald Trump's not good at details.
Philip Bump, thanks for joining us. Always good to see you.
Thank you.